Anyway, good to be here, boys. How you going, boys?
Hey, how you going?
Welcome back.
Yeah, good to see you.
Yeah, got a little bit of footage today.
Oh, yeah, cool.
Trying a
that'd be
few
all right.
new things.
Yeah, chuck a bit of stuff on YouTube.
Yep, YouTube.
Or whatever, yeah.
Get our social media presence out there.
Yeah,
Try a few new things.
yeah. Might also see a few little video clips coming up to prompt a few of our episodes.
Yeah,
Yeah,
getting it out there. Try a few things.
yeah,
We've got our Instagram page,
yeah.
Modern Ancestral Man. Got our email, modernancestral@gmail.com. So get in touch. A few new things on the horizon for the boys.
Yeah.
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 And what's today's topic? We're talking about politics because I guess modern ancestral man. I mean, we do relate our modern living to ancestral living.
Yeah.
There would have been politics back in ancestral days.
Absolutely.
Surely. You know,
Yeah,
you would have
that's-
had you would have had leaders.
Yep.
You would have had decision makers. You would have had those that allowed those to do those jobs. You would have had maybe possibly those in the tribe electing a representative or an elder or something like that to be council members.
Yeah.
So I guess modern day politics has originated from an ancestral sort of tribal
Absolutely, that would have happened, wouldn't it?
gathering or
Yeah.
decision making process.
Yeah,
Most
you would have had
definitely, yeah.
tribal
Yeah.
elders. You would have had people being elected or, chosen based on smarts, physical prowess, whatever it was, experience. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and unlike today's modern politics, they would have had the benefit and the welfare of the tribe in its paramount focus. I'm a bit disillusioned with modern day politics. I
Very
think
disillusioned.
politicians and governments now aren't for our best interests. You get a few certain politicians, and there's a few senators you could rattle off, and we'll probably talk about them in today's discussions. A few senators in Australia at the moment who are for everyday man's freedoms and human rights. But I say governments as a collective, they're just puppets at the moment. They're being run by a certain puppet master or puppet masters, and the welfare of the people doesn't really matter. And I think that became quite evident during COVID.
The backdoor goings on and the secretive lobbying and all those kind of deals that they've got in the background definitely doesn't serve the population well at all.
Yeah.
And it's nothing like what the ancestral man would have had, because if that had happened, you would have been removed from that position. Who knows what would have happened, but it wouldn't have, if you weren't serving the people of your tribe. You can look at any sort of, you look at the Vikings, you look at the indigenous, all those tribes, those kind of things. They would have got rid of those politicians if they'd got a whiff of those backdoor deals on the side, lobbying from big pharma, big industry, those kind of things that wouldn't happen. And we it's probably been happening for 100+ years now, hasn't it? But we've really let that slip in.
Yeah.
I think that word you hit the nail on the head is lobbying. We just have like lobby groups now and big interest groups and financial groups with so much money now to sort of like influence what's going on with our politics that it seems like the average man is not really in control of what's happening whatsoever. Like we get this illusion of, we're in a democracy and you can vote for whichever party you want. But really there's two parties you can vote for in Australia. There's Labor and Liberal. And once you get either of those parties in, they're kind of like vanilla and vanilla now. And they seem to be, to me, just sort of doing whatever they want. And the average man, our wants and needs don't seem to be really forefront in their thinking. It's about who's going to give them the most money through lobbying, how they're going to get ahead politically to get maybe another stint, some backdoor dealings to enrichen them a little bit or something like that.
If you do this deal for me, I'll do that for you. I'll get this bill passed for you. That kind of thing.
They've been compromised. They've been compromised by
Massively.
lobbyists. Yeah.
Massively.
The ones that are the independents that, there's sort of 4 or 5 of them, they almost hold a lot of power.
They do. Yep.
And
they're like the tiebreakers, aren't they?
Yeah.
In a way.
Yeah, because there's not a majority, is there, in federal politics at the moment? I think Labor, Labor are the leaders, but they don't have
a majority.
The majority in the Senate
in the
to
Senate.
pass too many
Not
things. So
without a
they
bit of wheeling
need
and dealing.
Unlike
yeah.
WA, so WA's Labor Party have the majority.
so they can get
seats.
things through fairly easily because
Without-
they're all on the same page.
Yeah.
It's what 90%,
Yeah,
And they have.
and they have
Yeah.
And then federally, it comes down to these five or six senators. You got to Jackie Lambie, Pauline Hanson, is it Pocock now? David Pocock. A few of them.
Pauline's hung in there.
Yeah.
One Nation are a shining light really for honesty and integrity. People write Pauline Hanson off, and I think
I used to really make a lot of fun of her.
She's been maligned through the media, and that's just been purposeful to do that, to distract her from those people, the working class people that see her as a viable option in politics. The two major parties have using the media, and we'll get onto that as well. The media as an arm for government. They've used the media to ostracise her as a
big time,
racist and as a whatever they've done to make people think. I mean, straight away now you hear the word Pauline Hanson and everyone goes, oh yeah, racist and blah blah blah. But you listen to her speeches and what her party stands for. They stand for the things that we all talk about, that most Aussies believe in.
They're doing deals too. There's no doubt about it.
Oh, no doubt.
Yeah, I mean, they have to
not.
survive in the modern
Yeah.
context, don't they? Like, they still need to get a certain amount of funding and they need to get a certain amount of things across the line. But I think now it's almost about like just choosing the least bad option, isn't it? If you want to participate in Australian politics at all, there's no sort of like shining light of honesty and integrity, with no sort of shortcomings. It's just about choosing the person who's least corrupt, unfortunately.
Yeah. I mean, I reckon
and
there's
closest to your values.
probably there are parties and politicians out there that don't fall for the corruption, and
Yeah, they're
I
short-lived.
doubt that.
yeah, I think they've got to do wheels and deals. They have to survive, like you said, but they've still got. I mean, you as a listener, as Joe Public, can sit there with your common sense and realise that someone's bullshitting you when they speak to you, right? Like you have your bullshit radar. And you listen to a politician talk to you and you go, oh, this guy's just talking off the reel. This guy's just spieling
The party
verbatim,
line.
just party line bullshit, political rhetoric that we've heard before. But then sometimes you'll hear someone who speaks and you go, wow, this person seems to be speaking from the heart. And you can really discern the difference. I can anyway.
I quite like Malcolm Roberts. He speaks... a fair bit of truth, I believe.
Yeah, well, I saw a great clip last night of Alex Antic, and he's another senator.
Yeah.
With Malcolm Roberts,
Yes.
Jared Rennick. There's a couple of other senators that are really, really fighting the fight for everyday Aussies who have either are doing it hard from losing their jobs after vaccine mandates. They're critical of this voice, which we'll talk about. So last night, Alex Antic was just asking. Domestic Affairs Department or something like that, heads of that department about how you qualify as a representative of the voice. So what are and so they just went on the argument that for decades there are three criteria. I think there's your identification, cultural links. So there must be a community that recognises you as Indigenous. And there's something else as well. I can't remember, but there were three sort of things. And he really wanted to screw down on the point that, okay, so if a Scottish person wants to be the voice, is there a percentage of Aboriginality or Indigenous that he is required to be a representative of the voice? And I guess we might as well talk about the voice for those that don't know about it. It's a constitutional change to Australian government to incorporate an Indigenous representation within our constitution.
Yes.
With that has a lot of questions around it, which aren't really being answered by the present government. They've come up with this concept of the voice and they say, look, don't worry about it. It's all going to be fine. We'll work out the nuts and bolts of it when it comes in after a referendum in October.
Yeah, after the referendum, that's handy, isn't it? After we've voted to change our constitution forever,
Yes.
then we'll work out the details.
Yeah.
It's like...
So basically, at the moment, our constitution represents all Australians. We're talking about Indigenous Australians. We're talking about white European Australians, and we're talking about immigrant Australians, those that have come over through immigration. Our constitution represents all those sort of demographics. What this voice plans to do is to change that constitution to have a separate representation for Indigenous Australians. And that therefore allows different laws to be applied to that group under a certain different constitution.
Well, that's where they're sort of debating how much power this voice is going to have, and I think different people have different takes on it. And I was looking into this because I've listened to like pro and anti-voice campaigners, and what it comes down to is what you said earlier, which is spot on. There's not a lot of context around like what it's actually going to mean, but I was looking at what they're actually proposing as the change to our constitution. There's 3 parts to it. Part 1, there shall be a body to be called the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Voice. Okay, yeah, cool. Part 2, the voice may make representations to Parliament on matters relating to Indigenous and Torres Strait Islander people's affairs. So they'll get this panel, however it looks. I've heard maybe 24 people kicked around as a panel of people who will then come together and make these representations to Parliament. But the third part is the bit for me which has a lot of it's got a lot of latitude how they apply it. Part 3 says the Parliament shall, subject to this Constitution, have powers to make laws with respect to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander voice, including its composition, function, powers and procedures. So basically, once it gets in, they're the 3 changes that they're proposing to the Constitution. So part 3, so the Parliament, subject to this change in the Constitution, will have powers to make laws with respect to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander voice, including composition, function, powers and procedures. So it doesn't say what any changes to powers or procedures or functions could be, but it says that they could change them. So really what it's saying is they can do any fucking thing they want, subject to what Parliament decides.
Yeah.
So the voice can't come out and say, we're going to do this, you have to support it. But the voice as a group can come together and say, well, as a group of 24 or however the thing looks, we think this. And then Parliament could come and say, oh, yeah, well, we're going to give you these powers and these functions and this composition so that you can do this. And because constitutionally it's been changed, then we have to just go, oh, okay, well. So really it seems to me like we're going to be at the mercy of just whatever Parliament decides.
Yeah, and
which to me is a bit scary.
Yeah, and what I'll gather also there, Smithy, is that if we as the people disapprove of that law change that Parliament or the voice part of Parliament brings in, then we don't get to argue that point through our Parliament. It has to go to a high court to be resolved.
Okay.
So it therefore goes to a higher level other than Parliament, and you've then got a judge that determines whether that law will stand or not, as opposed to the people voting for it or not.
Yeah.
And as we know, judges can be manipulated, or they might have different beliefs or different values, or come from different, different ideologies. I think it's taking away from the general person the choice to be able to vote for something or not.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, I understand the argument that has been put forward, which says that Indigenous people are not represented in our constitution whatsoever. It doesn't mention them, right? So I've got no problem with like mentioning, we, put something into our constitution to recognise that Indigenous people have been here for a long time and they've got a rich culture and all that sort of stuff. But whoever the group is representing this push have said, well, we don't want that because that's just like a paltry little throwaway thing. We want some real power. But like, isn't that what a democracy gives groups at the moment? Is like, if you believe in the democratically elected government and the power of government and the power of advocacy and, you know, all the things that you do as a person. And aren't people just by rights already going to be represented? Like, why do we need an extra group to represent a minority group when we're trying to say that we're all the same?
Yeah. Yeah, well, what you're just saying there,
It's
mate.
contradictory.
It's contradictory.
It's discriminatory.
Like-
So we are basically changing our constitution to discriminate one group of Australians from another.
a little bit, yeah. It kind of seems a bit like that.
And what you just said there was pretty much the same words as Tony Abbott. I was watching he was questioned in front of a council who were obviously all for the voice, and they were wanting his opinions of it as an ex-prime minister. And he said he recommends just changing the wording of our constitution to say that this constitution represents Indigenous Australians from so-and-so background, European settled Australians and Australians from immigration.
Yep.
He says that at the start of a constitution is all that you need to include everyone in the constitution. So why do we need a separate mechanism within our constitution to change it entirely to represent a certain group?
We're saying, don't be racist, but let's divide everyone by race.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah.
Don't see people through colour or race, but like politically, let's divide it by race.
Yeah. And I think we all agree that Indigenous Australians do suffer most of a lot of lifestyle sort of impacts that
Yeah, the health outcomes and stuff.
the health
are terrible.
outcomes, their education, that a lot of societal issues within the Indigenous population. A lot of those happen in remote communities where there's not a great deal of leadership. There's the abuse of alcohol. There's probably less policing involved around those groups. Well, I'm not saying policing is the answer, but I think the answer is probably leadership within the Indigenous group, and those leaders are there in Parliament already. I think there's probably 11 Indigenous representatives in federal Parliament right now, 9 or 11.
It's something like that. I heard a stat this morning that I think within Australia there's about 3-point-something% of our nation are Indigenous, and we have about a 5% of our politicians are Indigenous. So it seems to be fairly representative of, if you want to look at it through race, which
and those
this is what's forcing us
politicians,
to do.
those Indigenous politicians are doing excellent things and are a massive voice representing their people, and a lot of them have utmost respect, like that Jacinta Price. She's really good. I love listening to her. She's fantastic. But
also, I mean, why does a politician need to be of Indigenous background to represent Indigenous affairs? Like, I'm not saying they shouldn't be, but what I'm saying is, like, do you have to be Indigenous to care about Indigenous people? Like, I want to see them do well.
Oh, yeah.
I want to see them get educated and have excellent healthcare and have the same longevity that we enjoy and all that sort of stuff. But it's a pretty complicated, nuanced sort of thing. I'm not sure just having a panel of people chosen by the government who are going to advise the government on things, I feel like it's just another way that it's going to get corrupted and money's going to get diverted to areas where it's possibly not going to help.
And what you said there, mate, is true, that most Australians do believe in what you just said there, that they do want to see our Indigenous population do well, because that's evident in the fact that these politicians have been elected federally into Parliament. And so that tells us that Australians as a population want to see more Indigenous people in Parliament to represent their people and to help them.
Yeah.
I think the whole concept of throwing money at the Indigenous population to solve
doesn't seem to have
solve
worked.
issues doesn't
seem to have
work.
worked. It seems to almost throw fucking petrol on the fire a little bit.
Yeah.
Like just throwing money in ways that clearly doesn't seem to be helpful. It almost seems to be harmful. Seems to be not the answer.
Yeah.
To me. So I don't know how this is going to change it, but I do know that it's very divisive and it's very it's causing a big rift between the two camps.
Yeah.
It's not like an amicable type thing where we're all just going to, shake hands at the end of this and we're all good, and people seem to be very vehemently, one way or the other.
And you know what? Unfortunately, if the voice does get up, it's going to divide Australia. If it doesn't get up,
it's going to divide
it's still
Australia.
going to divide Australia.
It's divisive. It's a very divisive I'll tell you a few things that made me quite interested too. Did you know that politically, if you want to donate to support the yes vote for The Voice, tax deductible? Politically, if you want to contribute to the no vote to The Voice, not tax deductible.
Wow.
Is that right?
There was a debate on SBS a little while ago. They had 7 people on there to debate the merits of The Voice. Every single person debated pro-voice. Do you guys know any debates where you only have a one side? Like it just seems to me like it's a very crazy messaging thing coming out, and people have really chosen their side, but we're not really debating it.
It's another one of those things that's happening more and more frequently in the last few years, where you can't say anything about anything. If you're not on the right team, you get called whatever it is.
Whatever. Racist,
anti-vaxxer, any one of those things.
Right-wing extremist.
Right-wing extremist. And then, like, oh, that's not me, but why would I stand up and say anything if I'm just going to get shut down, or, these programs that have these things happening, they don't even have that on there. And even if they did, that person is going to get 6 to 1 or whatever it is, just attacked.
Yeah, absolutely. Just obliterated. Yeah.
Yeah. It's the whole politics game.
Well, also,
like
Facebook and Google are censoring the no side of the campaign.
Well, we know that's happened as well.
Because
in the past
you obviously want big tech companies, interjecting into your political debates. That
elections
makes it quite helpful. So Facebook have already shut down a couple of no campaign ads, or censored them for supposedly being insensitive or racist or whatever.
Really?
Wow. I mean, we're talking about a change to our constitution here. We should be debating this pretty thoroughly.
Yeah.
We should be having like some presidential style debate because I believe the Liberals have come out and essentially not supported it as a party, and Labor or the left have supported it. Why aren't we having some really in-depth, like factual debates where people can actually watch it and go, oh, I didn't know that about that. And because probably a lot of people don't know heaps about it. We just know that you're for it or against it. That's what a lot of people would sort of be, because we don't take in a lot of information these days. But
there might be a lot of people on the fence, but
heaps of people on the fence maybe.
Then
but
if you don't have that debate, how do you know?
But if you're on the fence and then all the debating is pro,
that's what, yeah.
You can see what the outcome is going to be, but is it a fair outcome, or are we like manipulating it?
Yeah.
Do you reckon people can see through the bullshit, mate? Do you reckon if there's so much advertising just pushing the yes and there's no representation of no, are people going to go, hang on, I don't really...
I mean, maybe, but it's almost like subliminal programming, isn't it? I don't give a fuck, whatever. Everyone's voting yes, I'll just vote yes, or...
Yeah.
Or everyone's voting no, I'll vote no, whatever. But
But how do you think it would go in a general conversation with people at a party if you said, oh, I'm against that?
I think you'd get mixed reactions, mate.
Do you think?
I reckon there's a lot of people out there that will say no purely for the fact they don't understand it. And I think that will be the government's downfall. They have not come out and outlined fully explained all the implications of it. So that if we did vote yes for it and said, oh, this looks pretty good, I like the way they've itemised this, if they backflipped on that, then we could say, well, hang on, but at the moment they're not doing that. They're not explaining anything about it. And it's just recently our WA government brought in that farmers...
don't get me started, the Cultural Heritage Act.
The Cultural Heritage Act,
whereby... I've heard of it. Now it's coming in at the start of next month.
Yeah. I asked my farmer mate whether he knew about this, and he said, no consultation with the farming community, no referendum on it, no information, nothing given to us. And now... come 1 July, if my farmer mate needs to dig a hole in his property, he needs to get approval from a Indigenous Heritage Land Act representative, which is obviously more money he's got to pay to get this process done. It's going to take weeks to get an answer. It's just another level of bureaucracy. And he can't basically do anything on his farm now. And I just think this voice, this Indigenous Heritage Land Act, this is all just a part of snatching land from Australians. And I think the Albanese government is just a puppet at the moment to a higher level, which want Australia divided. They want Australia's land and resources. And I think that's an entity higher above our government level.
But how does that work? Who's getting the land then?
It's probably the same entity that's trying to divide the US, probably the same entity dividing Canada as well. And that's probably be your globalists.
I think it's just making life hard, mate, to be honest, and it's just taking away landowners' rights to use their land is how I see it. So this Cultural Heritage Act in WA, it affects anyone whose land size is greater than 1,100 square metres. So if you own more than 1,000 square metres at roughly a quarter of an acre, so if your block size is bigger than a quarter of an acre, then all these rules apply. And essentially it is to protect Aboriginal heritage, which I agree with. Like, do you guys remember that gorge that was blown up by Rio Tinto maybe 2 or 3 years ago, the Winju Gorge or whatever it was? Terrible, like an amazing cave structure with all sorts of history in there, and this mining company blew it up. And essentially what happened is, back in the day, the sort of laws protecting the cultural heritage had this, it was almost like a workaround. It was called Section 18, where under this Section 18, they could go and they could claim some sort of exemption because they wanted to undertake mining or agriculture or whatever, and they would essentially go through a rubber stamp process, approve, and then they could go ahead and, with or without some restrictions, then they could go ahead and circumvent this sort of cultural heritage to a certain extent. Not to the extent that they could blow up gorges, but long story short, that's what happened. So in the aftermath of that, with this big mess up by Rio Tinto, they've said, all right, we're going to strengthen these cultural heritage laws. And now it seems like we've just gone like way, way, way the other way. So any person, doesn't matter what your enterprise is, whether you're a homeowner, whether you're in agriculture, in mining, in whatever, we've got this tiered system now to protect Aboriginal cultural heritage, which on the surface you go, oh, well, cool, Aboriginal cultural heritage, we want to protect that. But I'll take my property, for example. I live on greater than 1,100 square metres. And I have a brook flowing through my backyard. So a creek, basically. It's called Wooroloo Brook. So any brook is automatically deemed a protected, like, Indigenous sacred zone. So I can forget about doing anything down near my brook. I can't dig a hole. I can't do anything, right? That's off limits now. But for the rest of my property, if I want to be lawful now and I don't want to expose myself to the potential, risk of breaking this Cultural Heritage Act law, anytime that I want to dig a hole, remove a tree stump, put a fence in, basically do any of my daily rural living activities, I've got to refer to this. It's a tiered scheme, basically. There's 3 tiers. So tier 1, and I was looking at this again today just to do some research, they're very restrictive. So tier 1, which is the least bad one of the 3.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, Smithy. Let me ask you. So how do you find out about this as a homeowner?
The onus is just on you that you're just supposed to know. But I mean, there's been no political.
There would be a lot of people around that didn't know that was the case, and they'd be doing their own thing on their own property.
100%. 100%.
So is it?
And the Act says the onus is on you. Yeah, it's absolutely enforceable. There's jail sentences. There's fines. Well, I mean, I guess someone would dob you in, or the same as any other law that you break. The onus is always that you should know all the laws, and you should be. So if you go and drink 10 beers and go driving without a seatbelt, and you go, I didn't know that I wasn't allowed to drink, they'll be like, well, the onus is on you, you're supposed to know.
Yeah.
Well, this is obviously a much more obscure version of that, but this comes into full force on the 1st of July, so very shortly, 2023. And the onus is on you to, understand your rights and obligations.
Is this just in WA or is this a federal
This is just
thing?
in WA. There's been a similar one introduced in another state somewhere, but I believe this was in direct response to that incident that I spoke about, the Rio Tinto Gorge thing. So there's 3 tiers. So tier 1 activities, in maintaining existing infrastructure in a way that does not, over the course of 1 calendar year, involve any of the following: removing more than 4 kilos of material, disturbing more than 10 square metres of ground, disturbing more than 1 metre squared of contiguous ground, or excavating, so digging, to a depth of more than 50 centimetres.
Who come up with this?
Well, this is legislation. This has been passed through the WA Parliament, and now this comes into effect. So for me, removing more than 4 kilograms of material, well, if I want to dig a hole to put in 1 fence post in my rural property, I can promise you right now I'm going to remove more than 4 kilograms of material.
Yeah.
That's tier 1. That's the least restrictive tier.
What about residential waste from your house? You put 4 kilos of that in your bin that goes out.
So what's the worst tier, mate? That just seems so restrictive.
Yeah, but
So tier 1, I can do some of that stuff if I do. There's like an online portal now which you can go on and see what sacred areas are near your house. It's like a digital mapping thing. I've gone on there and I've had a look at my property. And so my property, I've got the brook running through. Like I say, I can forget about doing anything in my brook. I'm never allowed to dig a hole or do anything there again. I'd be fully cooked if someone dobbed me in. But down the road, about 1 kilometre from our house, we've got a bridge that runs over this brook. And that is a protected area in now. So I clicked on the protected area and it gives you information about why it's protected. And it's because there's one smooth river pebble of cultural significance underneath the bridge. So someone's obviously been in there and looked at it and gone, oh, that's a very significant pebble. This is a protected area.
Are you for real? 1 pebble.
Yeah, I'm not kidding.
It says that in black and white.
That's the reason that is given for that extra area of
Protection.
so that bridge that is in need of maintenance, you can't do anything to the bridge?
Well, they'll have to go through an extra
right.
thing of
Extra level
getting
of
out a
bureaucracy.
cultural liaison officer and getting in management plans, and all this stuff takes time, effort, and money.
Yeah.
So for me now, if I want to have an easy life and I want to just dig up a tree stump or dig a hole or put a fence in, if I want to be lawful, I've got to follow this extra really burdensome sort of like tiered system. So for tier 1, I can do something like a risk assessment where essentially I go online, I make sure that there's no extra sort of like cultural significance on the part that I want to do my works. And then if that comes up, I follow a whole other checklist of things. And if that's good to go, then I can say, all right, I think I'm okay to go here and I can carry forward, right? So I might be able to remove 4 kilos of material and be okay.
But wait, before you go on, Smitty,
Yep.
You've already now then announced yourself as a person in this criteria who now can be watched and observed. So they can then send an inspector over
I guess so.
to determine whether those works have been done on your land.
Yeah, I guess.
Because you've now submitted your own information into this site.
Oh, it's anonymous. You can
Is
just
it?
view it. You just go on and view like a map and it shows you and you can zoom in and out and there's all
Okay.
sorts of different lines and
Right.
squiggles and colours and,
Okay.
there's a legend.
Yep.
No,
Sorry to cut you off.
that's all right. So tier 2 essentially is the same thing. If you're greater than 1,100 square metres, it's sort of 20 kilos of material, 10 square metres of contiguous ground, excavating to a depth of 1 metre. Then you're starting to get into, you've got to pay like a liaison officer to come out or to give you some guidelines to follow to make sure that you're not, desecrating any sacred potential sites. And then tier 3 is above that. It's more to do with like drilling into the ground if you want to drill a bore or you want to do, excavations of greater than 1 metre and you're removing, some weight of soil, some arbitrary weight. And that becomes like a whole management plan, which again, it's going to be lengthy, it's going to be costly. Like imagine if you're a farmer and you need to be ploughing fields, digging holes, running with livestock, doing fencing. Imagine how much of a burden that's going to be.
Yeah.
Imagine how many guys is going to throw their hands up and go, fuck this.
Yeah.
Fucking out of this.
Yeah.
And then
Is that for people, residential people as well?
residential as well. If your block is greater than 1,100 square metres.
And
And
what
so-
was the act called, sorry?
The Cultural Heritage Act, WA.
Wow.
So there's been zero publicity. I haven't seen any. I mean, I don't watch TV, so that's a tricky one. But there's been no letter to me as a landholder saying, hey, by the way, starting 1st of July 2023, this is going to come into effect. Just radio silence. So unless you've just literally stumbled across it, you're listening to the Modern Ancestral Man podcast, getting the news as it happens or whatever. It's on you. I could just be out there. I mean, I own a bloody little excavator at home. I could have just gone out into my bloody paddock and decided I'm going to dig a hole to, bury my goldfish or whatever, and boom.
So there's either
Nazi.
2 reasons for this. Either one, it's tokenism, and will it really be enforced?
Yeah.
Are they really
well,
going to?
because most people will not adhere to it because you can't. You can't live your life.
No, that's right. And
I can't go, fuck, I need to dig a hole. I'm going to wait 3 weeks for the approval process, pay money. It's not going to happen.
yeah. So is it tokenism and it won't be enforced, or is it certainly going to be enforced, and they've done it underhandedly. They've brought it in underhandedly to catch people out and to fine you and to seize your property because you've broken this regulation.
I'll tell you what it's doing. It's taking away landowners' rights to just enjoy the use of their property. That's what it's doing. Imagine if you want to dig a pool.
Oh.
If you want a pool now and your property is greater than 1,100 square metres, you are fucked. You're not digging a pool. No chance.
Well, this also...
I mean, you are, but you have to jump through all those extra hoops.
This also brings about... And going on to the farmers
You got to drink
here.
through a lot of hoops to get a pool anyway.
Yeah, well, you got to jump through a couple more now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This, just talking about the farmers there, this sort of brings to my attention, you know, what was going on in the Netherlands with the government there trying to take away 3,000 farms.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously, you know, the Netherlands is renowned for its production from farming.
Destroying the planet by making food and all that sort of stuff.
Yep.
Yep.
Is this Australia's way of destroying farms? So as you just said there, Smitty, as a farmer, you're just going to go, fuck this. This is just bullshit. I'm out.
Well, it's going to make it hard. It's going to make it really hard to be just a lawful, respectful citizen who's just living your life, going about owning a property in the country.
Because all these...
If it's less than 1,100 square metres, fill your boots. Go and desecrate whatever you want.
Yeah.
You know? If your property is 1,050 square metres, fill your boots. Go dig all the holes you want.
Are you saying that this map you've got to look up, you've got to see on the map if there's cultural significance behind it? And if there's not, are you free to do what you want?
If it's tier 1, so the 4 kilograms. If it's tier 2 or tier 3, you've automatically still got to jump through hoops. You can't just write it off and say...
Even if it's not...
Even if there's nothing on it. So the only thing on my property, so I'm on 60 acres, the only thing on my 60 acres is my brook. Yeah. There's a certain amount of distance either side of the brook, and that is considered like a protected sacred area or whatever. So I know the brook's out of bounds. I can't do shit down near the brook.
Yeah.
You know, and that would probably, I assume, go, 20 metres or whatever either side. I don't know, whatever it is. But I think you can look at it on the map. But for the rest of my property, there's nothing there. So if I want to remove 4 kilograms, I can do my risk assessment and tick and flick all my little boxes, and I can legitimately say to someone, I went through it and I decided that there was no risk of blah, blah, blah. But if I want to go tier 2 or tier 3, I can't do that. I've got to go and get this further permission to do everyday living activities. I mean, what I would call everyday living. Because I mean, on a
That's crazy.
rural block, you do tend to do things like you might decide to remove a tree stump, a dead tree. A tree might fall over in a storm and it's sort of half in, half out the ground. It's in the middle of your driveway or something like that. So you're going to get your chainsaw out. You're going to cut it up. You're going to remove the rest of the stump. You're probably going to burn it out or whatever you need to do, because that's sort of the nature of living in a semi-rural area. But now that's all just going to be... It just seems very like they're trying to make it expensive and difficult to own land.
Yeah.
If you want to live in an apartment in the city, man...
Well, they don't want us.
Nuts.
They don't want us owning larger amounts of land, because they want us in the cities, mate.
Ah.
They want us in the cities to bring about the 15-minute city concept, and then we're all stuck in this city prison where the Internet of Things is working, and we're all run by, surveillance and they don't want us owning rural land.
Well, have you seen the windfall tax in Victoria that they've brought in? You guys across that? Windfall tax?
No.
I've seen that one, yeah.
Explain that one.
So if you live in Victoria now, and you live, not a residential block in the suburbs, but again a rural block. Say you live on, let's make the sums easy. Say you live on 100 acres, and your 100 acres is worth $1 million, right? And then the Planning Council of Victoria or whoever does zoning changes rezones your property and makes it so that now you can break your property up into 4 parcels, for example. So now, on paper, you haven't done anything. You're just sitting there. You're just owning your block. You've worked your whole life. You've worked for 40 years. You've paid off your $1 million property, and you laugh and no one can touch you. You own the bit of paper. No one owns your house. The bank doesn't own it, just you, right? Well, if they come and rezone it now, and your 100-acre parcel can now theoretically be chopped up into 4 or 5 separate parcels,
And it's worth more than $1 million.
it's worth more than $1 million now. So now it's worth $2 million. So you've made a theoretical increase. You haven't sold it, but you've made a theoretical increase of $1 million on paper. That's the Aussie dream, right? Like, people used to speculate on that shit and be like, yeah, fucking, it
This
got
is going to make me
rezoned.
X money. Yeah, cool.
I'm a made man.
Yeah.
Well, now the government goes, oh, hang on a sec. your property, because of our rezoning, is now worth an extra $1 million. You have to pay us 50% of that $1 million in 60 days.
Wow.
Doesn't matter if you rezone it or sell it. So all of a sudden, you've gone from owning your $1 million block, and there's no encumbrances on it, the bank doesn't own it, you've paid it off. Now, the extra $1 million that you've made, the state government wants 50% of that, $500,000.
Yeah.
Paid up front. Doesn't matter if you subdivide it.
Yeah.
They want that money in 60 days. But don't worry, if you can't pay it, we'll let you pay it off over 30 years at about 4% interest rate.
Wow.
So all of a sudden, you've got yourself a nice little $500,000 loan again to hold on to your property.
Yep.
Or you divide it up and sell it and give the government their cut, or you just throw your hands up in the air and say, fuck this, I'm moving to the suburbs.
Yep. Yep.
Windfall tax.
Windfall tax. Crooks.
So, I mean,
another little avenue
seems to be an assault
to discourage
on people who wish to own land.
Yes, and make money.
Well, not even
better themselves.
Oh, well, yeah, I guess so. But I mean, you don't have to be like an agriculturalist for that law to apply. You could just be an old pensioner that spent your whole life.
Yep.
Maybe your parents inherited
Toiling
you
away on the farm. Yeah.
Yeah, you know, maybe it's a 5th generation farm. Maybe, you know, your bloody great grandpa started after World War I or whatever, passed it down through the ages. Maybe it's 1,000 acres. And then they say, oh, well, yeah, we've rezoned it now, so all of a sudden you've got to pay us.
Yeah.
So that 50% I spoke of, the half, it's 50% if the increase in your property value is more than 500,000. So if the value of your property increases by more than 500,000, it's 50%. If it's between 100,000 and 500,000, it's 62.5%. It's higher.
Jesus.
Yeah.
Really? You're making less, but you're going to pay more tax.
Yeah. So if your property gets rezoned and it's worth an extra 100,000, the government is going to come knocking for $62,500.
Jesus.
And not if you sell it or if you subdivide it, just straight up. Doesn't matter what you do with it. So you can't just say, oh, well, I'm never going to subdivide it, so it doesn't apply. They say it doesn't matter. Theoretically, it applies. You've got to pay it now.
Has this been enforced on anyone, though, yet?
I don't know. It's fairly new legislation in Victoria. I don't know how often they are rezoning stuff.
Yeah.
But it's one of those laws where even if they say, oh, well, you know, yeah, it's there, but we're not going to use it. It's like, well,
why put it in?
Why put it in?
Yeah.
Because you are going to use it.
Yeah. Well, that's happened at my place. It doesn't really matter, but it got rezoned.
Yep.
And it pretty much went up a couple of 20 grand overnight because, you know, you can subdivide it and...
Yeah, probably went up more than that.
Yeah, probably. Yeah. But...
Yep.
Yeah, odd.
So, I mean, for you, you'd be all good because you're in a residential area. Like, if that law law is not in WA, just to be clear, that's in Victoria. Yes.
Yep. But still, you know, to have that happen overnight, say they've rezoned it, it goes up, for example, 20 grand. Overnight, you got to pay 10 grand. Not a lot of people have 10 grand lying around. They just pay for nothing.
Exactly. Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah. So,
I guess that's, I mean, you look at WA, it being a almost 90% majority party, they can get through these cultural reform taxes quite easily and with limited pushback from anyone.
That's what I found amazing in that our state election was that people still voted in Labor government when they knew they were going to have an overwhelming majority in the Senate.
Yeah.
I couldn't believe that. And I also think that was orchestrated. I think that opponent, Zach Kirkup, I think he was just a puppet. I think he
was never going to win, was he?
He was never going to win.
Well, all of them were.
He had very, very little political experience. I think as soon as he lost, he went back to his old job that he was doing. It was intentional to bring in that majority Labor seat so that they could do these little passings of legislation.
I don't think that was intentional at all. I think it's just the way it played out because the Liberals were they struggled hard. They didn't have a leader.
Yeah.
They had a very popular premier at the time. I don't know.
Who is now gone?
Intentionally by the Liberal Party to go, we can't win this. We're just going to put up this guy.
Wouldn't you just fight though?
The old can't win, don't try. You reckon, CJ?
Well, the problem that they had was if they try and shut down the most popular emperor we had, then they look bad. Like, look at these Liberals, they're sour, they get even less, and it would have been worse. So I can understand what they were trying to do. It was, I think
it
was nothing.
what you're saying is right, mate. The Liberal Party, state-wise and federally wise, have shot themselves in the foot by thinking they had to go woke, like the Labor left have. And I think they are slowly now realising that if they don't adhere to their conservative values, for which most Liberal voters voted for them for, then they are going to lose elections. And the woke left, the Labor left, will win. And I think that's slowly turning around now. And you can see Peter Dutton, the Liberal leader now federally, starting to push against a lot of this woke agenda, for want of a better word. Some of these things that are coming out of the left that are just so fanatically left that normal Aussies are just going, what the fuck? What are you talking about? You know, like he's now pushing against this. And I think the start of that was him pushing against that voice, which we spoke about. And I think you'll see a lot of Liberal parties now, state and federally, going back to that conservatism that a lot of Aussies value.
Well, the opposition has in the last 10 years, hasn't been an opposition, really. They're one and the same, like Smithy said earlier.
Yeah.
They're both vanilla.
Yeah.
You know, they're both...
And is that by design?
Well, is that what the population is wanting? I don't know.
And why do we have this concept of always just having a two-party mentality when we go to vote? It's the same as the US, the Republicans and Democrats. Why don't people see a third or a fourth option?
Yeah. Has there ever been a good one? You know what I mean? I know they tried. They tried in the US to have what they call the Central Party. I can't remember what it was named. They had sort of two, a Republican and a Democrat, and they were sort of the leader. They'd sort of battle it out, and then they formed this sort of centre party, and they just got swallowed up. Yeah. And that happens here too. You know, the Nationals.
But we mentioned One Nation earlier. I thought they were a good option, a good third option. But obviously, people have their own.
Yes, I don't think she does herself any favours, though. You know,
you don't just look at her. Look at all the other members of that party. Malcolm Roberts. What's the other guy in Victoria? The guy who used to be in federal politics. I can't remember his name. Latham. Mark Latham is a member of that party. They're all doing good work. Is Rennick a part of One Nation? Or is he
I'm not sure if he's
independent?
Just independent, maybe. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, it's an interesting time. I mean, interesting in US politics as well. I mean, you've got RFK, Robert Kennedy Jr.
I really hope he wins.
Putting up his hand.
He won't win, but I really hope he does.
Oh, man, can you imagine?
Got the pedigree. He's Kennedy.
Yeah.
I mean, arguably one of the great US
political
presidents.
families. Yeah.
Or political families, yeah.
Well, I heard him sort of compare himself to his uncle, because he's now putting himself in an election where he's going against a leader of his own party. He's now voting against a war.
You used the term leader loosely there.
Yeah. Yeah.
We'll talk about that.
Yeah, we can talk about leadership in another day, but jeez, he's a decrepit old man, isn't he?
Oh, I just feel bad for him.
Yeah.
Joe Biden, he needs to just be kicking back and enjoying the last years of his life.
Don't you reckon it's a bit insulting as a powerful country like the US to have a decrepit old man who falls over all the time and can't even speak properly and forgets people's names, can't say people's names.
Forgets his son's name and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, wouldn't you think you'd have someone staunch and strong for the US as a representative? I think Biden's a puppet. He's a puppet of the globalists. He is. He's in bed with China. They're doing deals. That's all come out. Yeah. That whole Durham report, that was really interesting. How that whole Trump-Russia collusion thing was just a full-on setup. Yeah. The Clinton and even Obama was in that, where they got the FBI to enforce big tech to bring on this story of this Russian. He was a Russian colluder, and that's all just come out now. And did you see that on mainstream media? Not a word about it.
Like, oh yeah, whatever. That's what they do.
That's just high treason. Yeah. Those people should be in prison.
What do we do as average people to just have a fair political system that everyone's happy with? Because you speak to like normal people on the street, and most people are like, "Oh, politics is fucked. It's so corrupt." But like, what do you actually do as a normal person to like affect any change at this stage? Is it unchangeable?
No, but because we are the people and we have the power. We vote them in to serve us. So we have the power to overrun our government. And you see those people protesting, not protesting.
Well, not really, because they've taken away the power of protest to the average person. You're not allowed to protest.
Exactly right. So you got people out there in front of Parliament House here in WA getting arrested because they want the Governor General to overthrow this state government, which he can do at the will of the people.
He can, but he obviously would never happen. But
what if enough people rose up? What if enough people gave a shit to rise up?
You got to wait till March 25 to have your say.
What's March 25?
Well, 2025 is the next election.
Oh, sorry. I think
we
the
elected
25th
him.
of March,
we have the preferential voting system. That's what happened. We voted 90%.
Yep, but as a
in
power
favour
of the people,
dude.
we have the power to remove a government also under our constitution through whatever means, Director General, whatever it is. We have the power to remove that government.
How do you do it? Yeah.
They represent us. And I don't know the mechanisms behind it.
How many people are there? 5,000, 10,000 people? Are they representative of the rest of the state?
We're only about 3 million short.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like, protests are great, don't get me wrong, but that's what that's what the democratic system is. Right or wrong, we fucked it up. We fucked it up by electing him or electing the Labor Party in at 90%.
I'll tell you how we don't fix it at this stage is go fucking with our constitution further for a change that we can never unchange, essentially, without a lot of drama. I know you can unchange it, but
yeah, man, if that was the people, if that's what the people wanted was to overthrow the government, by all means. But I just don't think that small minority that you see is representative of the wider community.
Do you reckon people are too just busy now to just give a fuck about
what's
happening?
Mate, everyday man's just too busy surviving.
Like, interest rates are rising. Everyone's worried about the economy and getting your kids off to sport and just living your life. Fuck whatever.
Well, you see a lot of these people protesting. There are older people who are probably not working anymore.
Yep.
And kudos to them for standing out there and being a voice for the people. Because
there's
I reckon
a heap of crazy people, which really delegitimises it. There'll be a crazy cat woman there with crazy signs and, there is. I've been to heaps of protests.
Avi Yemeni from Rebel News was interviewing a lot of them, and a lot of them spoke very eloquently and intelligently.
But they look like crazy people. People see it on the news and they go, "Oh, these fucking crackpots."
Yeah, well, that's probably
crazy cat.
They're probably selected people that mainstream media choose to portray.
They probably are, mate. But yeah.
I mean, let's look at mainstream media, how they've portrayed people. So that Italian Prime Minister, Giorgia Meloni.
They've gone quite the opposite, haven't they, the Italians?
Man, she came out espousing traditional values, family, work hard, be good to each other, blah, blah, blah. All these conservative values or traditional values. And she was hounded as a fascist.
Yeah.
She was hounded as like white supremacist and all this sort of bullshit for just speaking a conservative language that a lot of people resonated with.
Yep.
And then you've got this Fuit Trudeau from Canada. That guy is so toxic. He goes over there and lectures her about how Italy should treat LGBTQI plus population. Now that guy there, he's for a prime minister to hold the bank accounts of people legally protesting in his country. That's scary. That is scary.
Terrifying. Yeah. Yep. Even buying him a coffee or donating to it was cause to have all your stuff shut down.
Yeah.
So if you supported the truckers by buying one of them a cup of coffee and they could prove it, they could potentially turn off all your funds.
Yeah. And we know where he's come from. He's come from the same future leaders school as Jacinda Ardern and a lot of other politicians where that Klaus Schwab...
he'll leave soon, mate, because they all seem to be leaving. Jacinta's gone.
Yeah, they go on to different things, don't they? Because that Klaus Schwab has said his future leaders... Once we get them infiltrated into governments, changes will happen. He's even said that. He's been quoted as saying, infiltrating future leaders into world governments. And that's happening.
Well, I reckon stuff's going to turn around. I reckon average people are going to have enough at some stage.
Yeah, it's a slow turnaround, but you can see it happening.
People will get a bit jack of it. I think common sense prevails.
Yeah.
I don't think we need to have this, crazy violent uprising or anything, and I obviously don't condone that at all. But I mean... I just feel like people will get to a point where they'll be like, I'm going to vote for the other guys.
Yeah. And, mate, I think common sense may not even be the word. I just think good over evil. I think if if there's evil and darkness priorities out there in the world, good and light will prevail.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I think that's just human nature.
Well, just living a lawful, sort of unmessed with life. You know, don't mess with like every part of my life where everything is illegal and requires papers and stuff. Just let me live my life.
Yeah.
You know.
But the only thing is, mate, too many people asleep at the wheel to see this happening in the background before it actually comes in and hits you, slaps you in the face.
Maybe.
Oh, shit, what do you mean I can't buy red meat? Oh, shit, what do you mean I can't drive 15 minutes from my home? I didn't see that coming.
Interesting time to be alive.
Isn't that when we have a democratic election? If you don't like it, then you get voted in.
No, that's when you have a revolution, man.
Well, that's what that is, isn't it?
A democratic election.
Well, if you don't like that guy who's in, then you vote the next guy in, right? And if the next guy's saying what you want to hear, you vote them in.
Yeah, that's if our elections are straight and narrow down the line, mate.
Well, that's
sure.
If the two parties aren't the same, like we were talking about earlier.
Well, that's the big problem, isn't it? Like, how do you get the, you know?
Well, it's the whole system. It's, you know, it's the media manipulation to be told what to think. So most of the people, okay, I agree with a 15-minute city. You know what I mean? Because we've been told that's a great idea.
Been told the climate's changing and it's my fault.
Yeah, until that comes in and it's no good. Yeah, maybe then you need.
Maybe we need to try it, and people will realise that it kind of sucks a little bit, and you know.
Well, but like then
I'm eating crickets for dinner instead of sirloin steak.
Yeah, I mean, what's your take on this one world government, which the World Health Organisations and the
won't work. It can't. Doesn't work.
Hopefully, it doesn't get across the line, but I guess we'll find out.
The International Monetary Fund, all those different sort of organisations, and I mean, I think the WHO's pandemic treaty is this little thin-ended of wedge sort of thing. You know, they get that in. Countries lose their sovereignty to make their own health decisions.
I'll tell you what'll be a little bit tricky is the Australian Treasurer and basically every developed country in the world has come out and said we're going to go towards this like central bank digital currency. It's going to be quite tricky to circumvent like fines and things like that once we have a digital currency. Oh,
and mate, this whole economic crisis, which is about to loom, and I heard a financial sort of commentator speak about this. In the US, they reckon there will be a Great Depression greater than the 30s or 50s?
29.
20s, 30s,
yeah. There'll be a crash, massive crash, and that will be your problem, much like your COVID virus or your
solution.
Yep, and then the solution will be the central banking electronic digital currency. That will then allow those totalitarians to have full control over our life, what we spend, our taxes.
Definitely won't be a lot of privacy.
No, what you can buy, what you can't.
Yeah, be tough to do anything privately if there's no option to pay cash.
Yep. Yeah. That sort of concerns me. That's
a big concern.
That concerns me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if people can't see that, you know, you see people tapping their phones on the FPOS machine, and you know, you pull out cash, and people look at you like you're a retard.
Yeah.
And you're like, you're using cash.
You get that look now when I roll into the servo and I've got my cash for my fuel. They get all annoyed because I've already got it dialed up on the ATM thing. They got to cancel it, and oh god, they got to work out.
Yeah. But tapping the FPOS is completely different to a central banking currency.
Yeah. I'm just this is the sort of the mentality, a lineup that people have with the convenience of digital currency.
You would have to understand the background of a central banking digital currency to work out that they're different to tapping, because people love the convenience of that.
I tap sometimes.
Yeah,
sometimes it is convenient.
Cash, I barely use cash anymore, but nobody can really tell what I'm, or can't immediately stop my transaction.
No, yeah, that's right.
At the time, because all the transactions for, let's say you go to the servo, all the transactions from all the different banks are kind of pooled, and at the end of the day, they go off to the different banks. The banks get their money and come back. So at the time, nobody knows what I'm buying. I mean, yeah, it's listed on my bank transaction, but it's not a central one that goes to the central bank and then says, Chris has had too much fuel. He's been driving his car too much.
Correct.
You can't actually get that fuel. You're out.
Yep.
That's an immediate thing. Whereas now it's just tap. That's fine. I understand where you come from with the cash and stuff, but you need cash in society. But
well, that's the thing at the moment. You have the option to pay cash. It's your option. If you choose to pay FPOS, pay FPOS. If you choose to pay cash, you can pay cash. So you have the choice.
And the central banking currency is different to FPOS.
Very different. Yep.
It's I don't know. I guess it being the wedge that you talk about. Oh well, we're used to this. It's fine. It's the same. It'll just be the same when it's not. People need to understand that.
Very, very
otherwise,
we'll probably do an episode on that. That'd be interesting. Delve into that a bit and maybe into crypto and other forms of currency throughout the ages.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, man's always had currency and ways to barter and things like that.
Yeah.
We're just very much digitising everything now, so it's going to be an interesting change. I'm sure we'll fuck it up.
And I don't mind digitising everything as long as I've got the freedom to buy and whatever I want when I want.
Yeah.
I don't want it to be an overseeing, controlling factor of my life.
Yeah.
Well, at the moment, I mean, you could have 20 grand stuffed under your mattress at home. It's going to be really hard to do that with digital. There's going to be no anonymity, is there?
Well, look at...
And people say, don't keep money at home because you have a house fire or robbers or whatever, but it's your option,
robbers.
isn't it?
Well, banks are discouraging people from taking their money out. You've got to let them know 3 days in advance if you want something more than $2,000
through the hoops now.
Yeah,
my missus tried.
You
to
can
buy
only
a
take
$1,000
out
a while ago, and they were questioning her if she was using it to buy drugs and this and that. And are you being scammed? And is someone pressuring you for this money? And
aren't the banks red hot?
It's like, I just want my fucking money. She was trying to take out 10 grand to buy a horse float or some shit. The lady was, she's like, I've got to ask you, are you under duress? She's like, no. What are you going to do with the money? We've got to just write it down here. She's like,
are you for real?
No joke.
Did she say it's none of your fucking business? But if she did, she wouldn't be able to get her money.
I think she made a joke and said, I'm going to go buy crack or something like that. And the lady's like, oh! She said, no, I'm just going to go and...
They got found to be laundering cartel money, big banks.
Yeah, that's okay.
And they got the hide to ask someone for their money for 10 grand for a little horse float.
Your savings.
Crazy, yeah.
Crazy. Yeah. It's next level.
Oh.
Yeah. Anyway. Oh, we've ranted about this a fair bit. We've really sounded like belligerent old men.
Yeah.
Talking about the good old days. Yeah. Cash and...
The good old days when you believed your politician was a good leader.
Yep, exactly.
Maybe we should talk about leaders and leadership. And
I reckon, what makes a good leader? That's a bloody... Yeah, that's a rabbit hole, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I struggle to find a good one these days.
Let's start our next episode on that.
All right, let's do it.
Oh, good chatting with you, boys.
Good on you, fellas. Till next time.
Get your guitars ready.